Okay. All right. I think we're ready to go. I'm going to start broadcasting. Hello, welcome. I want to welcome everybody in the audience and our guests to the second of our Berkeley Stanford African Innovation Seminars, something that we dreamed up in the middle of COVID, but I think it reaches it serves a purpose beyond what COVID forces us to do. So our goal here in this series is to connect with the wonderful alumni that we have from both Berkeley and Stanford, who have been making differences in the African continent in terms of innovation, in terms of business, in terms of solving problems. So with us today, we have Mikael Hajjar, who is going to be helping us interview our special guest. He is a graduate of both Berkeley and Stanford with an engineering degree from Stanford and an engineering degree from Berkeley and a business degree from Stanford. He comes from Mauritania. He has worked all over the world and lived on 4 continents. He has worked at Areva, where he did his first $1 million enterprise deals. Areva is a Fortune 500 company in clean energy technology. He also had a stint at Waymo, the former Google self-driving project, and at Neo Capital, which is led by William Li, who is the Elon Musk of China. Mikael is passionate about tech investment in Africa and co-founded P1 Ventures with his partners that invested in Nala Money, Wallets Africa, and Yasir IO. Our special guest today is Kagure Wamunyu, who is the Chief Strategy Officer at Kobo 360. She leads the strategy and execution for growth of all Kobo 360 markets, heads the people function, and also heads the African region markets. Before that, she served as Kobo 360 CEO of the Africa region, leading the expansion and growth outside the Nigerian market. And just to clarify, Kobo 360 is an African company based originally in Nigeria and now spreading across different parts of Africa. This is a great fit for Kagure. She has a passion for transport. She believes that this is really important in the economic development of Africa. Before this, she served as the Senior Director of Strategy for Bridge International Academies in East Africa, where she focused on policy. Before Bridge, she worked as the country manager for Uber in Kenya, where she joined as the first hire in Nairobi at launch and grew Uber to be a major transportation option in Nairobi. Currently, and if she's not busy enough, she's currently is doing a part-time PhD at the University of Oxford. She holds a master's degree in city planning with a focus on transportation from UC Berkeley, where she was a MasterCard Foundation scholar at the time. She has a bachelor's degree in civil engineering with a focus on transport from North Carolina State and a BA in mathematics from Meredith College. She sits on the boards of FUZU and the SOMO project, and she's an active alumni of Zawadi Africa Education Fund. And she also runs a really wonderful cafe if you're ever in Nairobi and can go to Lava Latte. It's a really happening place with lots of activity all the time, and it's very chill at the same time, activity and chill at the same time. So with that, the way that this session is going to work, Mikael and Kagure are going to have a conversation, and we will be collecting questions in the Q&A. So Marin, whom you see his picture over here, he works with us at the Center for African Studies, running as the advisor for the MasterCard Foundation Scholars Program, and so he is going to be helping collect the questions. So if you do have questions, post them in the Q&A. But before we get to those, there will be a conversation between Kagure and Mikael. So with that, I am going to, just hand it over to Mikael and Kagure, and we'll see where the conversation goes. All right.
Thank you so very much, Marta, and thank you so much for the Berkeley Center of African Studies, the Stanford Center of African Studies, and our sponsors. We're very grateful to be here and to welcome Kagure on our speaker series. Kagure, we're very, very excited to have you here today. And there are like a number of questions we want to go through with you. The first one being really about maybe, diversity and specifically gender parity. There are sadly only a handful of females I can think of top of mind that are in leadership tech positions globally, and Africa is no exception yet. One of my favorite quotes from you was, you can't dream what you haven't ever seen. And, I think you alluded to some of your, of those women. You alluded in previous interviews to some of those women, like I think Wangari Maathai, a Kenyan Nobel Prize winner in 2014, that was instrumental in helping you dream, because you've seen what women were able to do and the difference they were able to make in the world. And that enabled you to dream bigger and inspire you to achieve what you achieve today. And I think we also fairly aware of like cultural barriers and the challenges. And, I think you also mentioned a couple of times how hard it's been to have those conversations with your folks. And, you were grateful that your parents never tried to deter you to take on leadership roles in logistics or transportation. And that is considered, a relatively misogynist industry. I mean, transportation and logistics is not the most woman-friendly business. And I was curious to, ask you, beyond avoiding to deter, can African parents really inspire and help, their kids grow?
Okay. So thanks for the question. So in terms of can African parents do this, I think I'll just speak from some of the few things I've learned along the way. I think that the first thing is having this balance where, so I'm first generation college student. So having this balance of your parents didn't go to college, but they have big dreams for you, but they also don't know what these dreams are beyond being doctor, engineer, and lawyer. That's the typical African parent, which I had to actually check the engineering part for the, for the parents kind of thing. But I think that it is creating that opportunity, allowing children, or in my case, my parents allowed me to be able to say what it is that I dreamt of. I initially knew that, I wanted to do something that had to do with helping people. And I remember having that talk with them and they're like, oh, you're not going to be an engineer, doctor, or lawyer, like literally the three options. And I remember that as I was thinking about what to study, I needed to tie it. I knew that I wanted to help people, but also I was passionate about transport. So I was trying to tie the two together. And even by the time I was going to college, I did not know of something like urban planning. Again, I only knew what I had read or what would be talked about in high school, and urban planning wasn't one of them. And I discovered it in third year. So just having that voice, or being able to tell my parents, oh, I'm finishing my degree, but I want to do urban planning. So the fact that they allowed for that to happen, I think has been instrumental. The other thing is that when I was applying to college, it was, believe it or not, before internet or laptops were quite common. And I remember for us, it meant the cyber. It was about 10 US cents for every minute of browsing. It was expensive. And so, there is nothing. So you listen around, then you hear someone say Meredith College. So you go home and then Google, because you have no way of starting. And so just having that opportunity for them, allowing you to dream beyond what is available, is quite important. So the support of it, but being able as a student, in my case, or now as somebody who works, to be respectful, to know that even when you're given guidance, there's the limitation, but to also take it positively, and to be humble to know, that they may not have had the experience. So to be able to explain what it is that you're looking to dream of, why are you studying what you're studying? Why are you gonna work in, they always told me one time when I said I'm working for Uber, they were like, you went to school so that you can do taxi work. Like, it shocked them. And they were angry. Like, my dad was like, is even being a taxi dispatcher a woman's job? those are the kinds of conversations that you should be okay to have, because you then understand where African parents come from. But then also on the flip side, it's opportunity. It's opportunity to show them the power of education. It is opportunity to show people around you in the community that you don't always have to do what is traditional. Other parents will send their kids to talk to me, and they're like, talk to my child, they're thinking of doing something. So I think it's a growth thing. It's a balance of respect, and also the recognition that we have more exposure than our parents. And so walking the path with them. Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing. This is very insightful. And I really like the balance of respect, but also, challenge and respectfully debate. I think this is really how the best ideas emerge. And I think you're 100% right. Like, women have intrinsic strength when it comes to debating and having those conversations. I'm actually very curious. Like, I think you mentioned last March in one of your interviews that globally it's tough to be a lady in a position of authority, and that you were able to basically come better prepared to meetings and make sure there was no room for mistakes. Almost like scripting meetings was a way for you to anticipate the outcomes and manage the conversation so that it goes smoothly. And I'm curious, what else are like the whole like secret hacks or tactics that African women can leverage to make a real difference in the tech scene? Have you ever joined like mentoring groups like She Leads Africa or others maybe?
Okay. So I think little hacks to succeed in the tech world in Africa. I will say one of the ones I feel very strongly about is communication. If you cannot learn how to communicate, you will fail. And I had to teach myself, and by communication, I mean how you talk, how you speak, just being able to speak in public, being able to express your ideas. So a lot of time the tech world, you have ideas, you're building something, but for as long as that you cannot convey what it is you're saying, it becomes difficult for people to buy what it is that you want to do. So communication has been quite critical. And again, to what you're alluding, the gender challenges that exist, you've got to be articulate. One of the tricks I use is 3 points. Always have 3 points. When you finish talking, summarize in a statement. Kind of, those skills you learn in college when you're doing essay writing, they sound silly because you're thinking, oh, why am I having to do a novel from 1800s? But when you think about it, the ability to express yourself and have just articulate points and a summary in what you're doing really helps. So it's been quite instrumental for me, I think, from the ability to represent the company, the ability to present in front of the board of directors for the company, I would say. But also when I do a project, or being able to translate data and just tell a story from the data, being able to interpret data, I think that has been one of the things. The second is what you've alluded to. So it could be mentorship, but also network. So for example, I'm a MasterCard alum. So being in a network of women I met while I was at Berkeley, that we were all doing masters together, just being able to talk to them about the challenges that each one of us is facing, but also having people to look up to, that inspires you. So it could be a call and somebody say, whether they're in Tanzania, Rwanda, or Mauritius, you're like, I'm having this challenge with my boss. What is it that I can do? So just having that space to be able to speak to people is quite important, especially your peers. And then the third thing is women that you admire. So one of my mentors, being able to go for coffee with them and just being open of the challenges that I have faced has actually changed so much for me. Again, I said, when you're a first generation college student, you do not have that many people in your family, for example, you're able to ask about certain things because they didn't experience it. But so looking for somebody who has been where you have been is quite instrumental. Sometimes it's just someone who was 5 years ahead of you in college, or 3 years. And sometimes you just need someone who's already the CEO that you want to be 10, 20 years from now. So I'd say those have been the hacks that I have seen. And I think in Africa, there's a combination of being local, and also having studied abroad. So I'll speak about, you're building a product that should be locally used. So your understanding of the local market is extremely important. So you take, for example, Kobo is building, it's changing logistics in Africa. I've got to understand how, for example, in this case, a Kenyan thinks when it comes to logistics. But at the same time, I'm working for a company that is global. I need to be able to communicate with other people. How do I present? So that combination of local versus international, whether it's how you switch tongue as you talk, whether it's how you're able to take in what you learned versus the local experiences to just come up with a solution. I think those are some of the things that support in success in technology.
Yeah, no, that makes a ton of sense, and thank you so much for sharing those hacks. I think it will come in handy, and why don't we even try it? Like, I think we can totally do that at the end of this webinar. We can try to summarize maybe the three main takeaways. I'll try to develop some thoughts on what could those be, and I think it would be a good way for me to also try your tactic. Thanks for sharing. You alluded to Kobo, and it's been one of the most promising startups on the continent. It's been very exciting. I think it graduated from one of the most selective accelerator, worldwide, the Y Combinator, and it's been attracting capital from some of the world's finest financial institutions, including Goldman Sachs. And I think what we really like about you is that you were able to work both in African edtech and mobility tech sectors. So you mentioned your dad scrambling to understand why you were dispatching taxis. I think Uber does much more than that, and of course, and as you said, I think through EdBridge and other experiences you had, like side hustles, the many side hustles you have. We were really curious to discuss with you what are some of the common challenges and opportunities that you noticed, maybe being this national, like African and international, the fact that you were both like trained in the West and then had the opportunity to work in Africa in tech. We were curious, like having time spent in education and mobility, what are some of the common challenges and opportunities? One that come to mind that you addressed is that in one of your previous interviews too, I think it's about payments. The fact that Uber had to charge their clients locally, but they didn't have any credit cards, and so they had to adopt to a local, whether it's M-Pesa or cash. And then I was curious, maybe you faced similar things in tuition fees with EdBridge, or maybe there are other challenges in public infrastructure gaps or private sector affordability that you can help us better understand, and how your profile, having been trained in the West and then being from the region, like literally the first hire at Uber and in Nairobi, could help bridge those challenges and maybe some opportunities you may be able to address too.
Okay, so in terms of the opportunities that exist or the gap that exists in the market, is that the many opportunities and problems we have in the market are at scale. So the solution that anybody interested in tech should be thinking about is something that can scale or that can actually impact the problems at scale. The reason is that if you look at it from any sector, whether it's healthcare, transport, education, everything, the problem doesn't affect 10 people, 100 or 1,000. We're talking about a huge majority in the continent being affected. And so opportunities that exist should, in any solution you think about, thinking about it from scale is extremely important. And it's frankly how, what I would say, makes a difference between a successful and a non-successful startup in the continent. Actually, the joke now within the company is a quote from the CEO where he said, "Seek ye scale and the rest shall be added to you." It has something to do with the Bible, but really you turn it into what is really critical in terms of just the solutions that are needed in what it is that we're doing. So I would say scale. Whatever it is industry that somebody is thinking about, the solution must be scalable. Now, why again must it be scalable is that people may not have $100 to spend, but you know what? If you have 1 billion people with $1 to spend, you're talking about a much bigger market. So I think that's the second thing I would say as something I have noticed, and in terms of that makes a difference. So all the 3 markets that I've worked in 3 companies I've worked in have focused on scale. So all the way, even from Uber to Bridge to Kobo, all the success factor is about the scale element. And then the third thing is that there is what I think, and I did not know this, what is until last year, what is considered like, I don't know the word to use, like the markets in Africa. So everybody wants to work in South Africa, Egypt, Nigeria, maybe Ghana, Kenya. Like it's about 5 countries. And this could be surprising, but one of the things I learned as I was scaling Kobo is that there's all these untapped markets that people don't talk about, that have so much opportunity, whether it's from the changes in regulation, maybe they've opened up their economy to be accessible. There's all these, blocks of trade that are being established. There's the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement that's now come in place that actually opens up markets we would probably never have thought of. So I think that it doesn't always have to be the 8 countries in the continent, but there's all these other countries that have just not been tapped into. And so the question becomes, how do you think of a solution? It doesn't have to be a solution from the West coming to Africa. It could be coming from, say, one of the 5 countries into a smaller country. And that's just really I would say the 3 things I've noticed in general in terms of opportunities on the continent.
Thank you so much for sharing. This is something that is actually very close to my heart. I'm personally a fellow African from a second, if not third tier countries in Africa, being from Mauritania. And it's, usually people raise their eyebrows. You said Mauritius? I'm like, no, nothing as glamorous as Mauritius. It's, it's like confusing California and West Virginia, probably. Mauritania is definitely out there and one of those countries that is growing and not as well known. And it's funny because, like, to your point, I think looking at data, whether it's Y Combinator or just venture capital in general, I think we've seen a concentration of opportunities in a handful of markets that you exactly alluded to. I think historically 10 years ago it was mostly South Africa. And we've seen the rise of Kenya, we've seen the rise of Nigeria lately, and Egypt is now happening. There has been a number of other countries, and at P1 Ventures, Pamoja, we pride ourselves actually in backing the underdogs. So we were some of the early backers of the first YC company from Tanzania, the first YC company from Algeria, countries that are emerging, and that and we tend to balance our portfolio between emerging markets, so like Nigeria, and ones that are less mature, like Algeria and Tanzania. And I think one should keep in mind that Africa is 54 countries and many different languages, and it's very important to keep this in mind. And I think you're 100% right. Like, one of the opportunities is about opening up Africa, and I think Kobo is doing this through trade. I think the non-tariff barriers is a hot topic. Like, the paperwork needed to clear customs is something we discuss at length, and it's hopefully going to improve. I think that those can be impactful in nature in terms of businesses. And I'm actually curious, maybe just take a step back and, being one of the Mastercard Foundation fellow and alum, is there, like, when you look back, is there anything you wish you knew 10 years ago? And is there something you can share with the audience today on an advice you would give yourself like 10 years ago?
So when I was a scholar, which was for me in grad school, I think I was so terrified of coming home. I was like scared. And again, you just have to think about it. Home from the eyes of your parents. the opportunities they had is what you imagine will be the opportunities you have, maybe slightly better. And that terrified me. And I think if I had known, I moved back home like right after graduation. I never used my OPT even once. And I think if I had known, I would not have been terrified. I think that's the thing. I was so scared. I did not know what the future held. And I think just taking that leap of faith and moving back home was quite helpful. And I actually would say it has been good for me and for my career in general. And so just looking back is that. And I think what helped was that taking opportunities that help, whether it's your research project, looking at problems that exist back home. So I'm an urban planner, so we used to do things like looking at transport in the Bay Area. And I remember one time we'd sit in a class and someone would complain that the bus, I'm trying to remember the name of the bus, that the Oakland, kind of the East Bay bus, I do not remember. And someone would say, oh, the bus is so inefficient. It runs 3 minutes late. And I was like, you even have a bus? I don't even know what you're talking about. Like, I can't even begin to understand what it is you're talking about. And, it's in that you realize, what, all my projects have to be about Kenya. Like, I cannot, it's great to improve the minutes from 4 minutes to 1 minute, but guess what? We do not even have a public transport system. So, and looking at it, when I did like my project works, almost all my projects were on actually Nairobi. When I was interviewed for transport in Nairobi, I had done my undergrad in the US and I'd done my master's there. It was very easy for me to have no idea how the transport system is like in Kenya. And the fact that I had done my work and my research on that market really is what allowed me to look like I understood what it is that was going on. Because it's also very easy to travel and then be detached. So I think looking back, I did that, but I think there would have been room to even do more, I think. Just keeping in touch in terms of the research that you do, the projects that you do, it does come in handy, whether you want to work in technology, in agriculture. Do you understand what's happening in agriculture? It is great to know what's happening in the US, but for as long as you do not understand what's happening locally, you cannot localize solutions. And so in that interview, you lose the edge. You lose why somebody would want to work with you, hire you, partner with you if they're looking to start a startup, etc. So I think those are some of the things I would say, yeah.
Yeah, no, I love it. And I think, we all experience that living abroad and like, studying abroad and working abroad is sometimes you feel like the problems that, are being addressed is really just, first world sort of problems. And sometimes it's important to take a step back, look at, what's going on back home and reflect. And, something you also alluded to, which I really like, is that the ability to drive a bigger impact. It's like being essentially a big fish in a smaller pond, and stretching yourself. And there's this quote I think that I also love about that you mentioned a while back. I think in one of your interviews, is like Kenyans love side hustle, and so in addition to having a point of view and building a brand and have a clear cut opinion on visibility on opportunities based on your Western experience, the ability to just work on many different things, including lava latte and like fuzu and somo, and this is something that you're able to basically achieve at home because you have like maybe more exposure. You have better visibility on other opportunities, and you're able to really thrive, I think. But yeah, and I thank you so much for sharing. I think that that definitely resonates. I mean, the bus being 4 minutes late is a really funny one, and we all experience this around the webinar here. I'm curious to and again, like you were in 2015. You left the US, you made this leap of faith to move back, and it wasn't a trivial one. As you said, you had the opportunity to take local offers, use your OPT, work in the U.S. and you parted ways with that, and you were at peace with it. And I'm curious, like, so in Africa, in tech specifically, there are a number of like rumors that keep popping, and somehow I feel like sometimes Africans need to be more optimists about their own like tech scene. We've seen it recently, through like whether it's OPay that was qualified as like a failure because it shut down after raising $200 million of capital, and there are lessons learned from those failures, right? I mean, some people even keep on calling Jumia not an African company because it's headquartered in Germany and led by mostly like foreigners. And some people even go off, on a tangent and say that Andela is not quite a unicorn yet, and that they had to let go a number of people and pivot into a new business model. So there, and even more recently, we've seen a lot of controversies around like foreign venture capitalists or source of capital favoring foreign entrepreneurs versus local entrepreneurs. And you alluded to this rich background of basically local Africans that go and are trained abroad and come back. And I'm curious, like, did you ever experience this? I mean, Kobo is definitely crushing it, and it's been very impressive what they've been able to, because there are like all African trained in the West, came back, leadership team that is phenomenal, outstanding cap table with like the Goldman Sachs of the world and others. And I'm curious, do you believe that Africans need to be a bit more optimistic about their tech scenes? And do you think like things take a little longer in Africa, or like, what's your 2 cents on what are the next opportunities and unicorns on the continent?
So I think, first of all, yes, we need to be optimistic because, as you said, it's a market, and a market will have multiple things. It will have successes, it will have failures, it will have things.
We have a hang in the, I think she's coming back on now.
Okay.
Yeah. This perhaps speaks to one of our questions that have come up about broadband infrastructure and connectivity in Africa.
It does quite a great deal. It's ironic enough that it comes up now.
Yeah. Oh. So Kagure, it looks like you're lagging a bit there. The technology, the connectivity is lagging.
Is that stay one key.
Kagure, could you go back and repeat, because
okay. Is this better?
Now
is this better?
That's great.
Okay. So I think that so I was discussing should we be more optimistic in terms about how we think about the continent, and I think the answer is yes. I think that there is great opportunity. In every market, there is success, there is failure, and there's basically what can be considered average. But I think that there is so much that can be done on the continent. Our tech market is not that old, maybe 10, 15 years. And really, a lot of it has not happened, started happening maybe 5 years ago. So I think there is so much that can be done. When you look at the opportunities that exist. But then the other thing is also to think about that the secret to our success is scale. Africa is one big continent of 54 countries. And so for it to make a difference, when you look at our GDPs, they're much smaller when you look at it from a state-to-state perspective. But when you look at the entire continent, all of a sudden, everything becomes exciting. The opportunity, the number of people, etc. So I think that we do have quite a lot to do. And this is because we also started pretty late. And I think in it, there will be lessons to be learned. But I think one of the things, if you look at a company like Kobo, that we do and we focus on doing is that we do not make excuses that, oh, it is better in Europe and in America, but in Africa, we expect you to think it's okay for us to scale much less. It's actually vice versa. We scale faster than American companies. We scale faster than European companies. And that's the whole idea. So thinking of it as, I need to make it work in this context. I can explain the context, but what I cannot be forgiven for is to say, no, I can't grow because I'm in Africa. So then you did not create a solution that makes sense for the continent that you are in. And I think that's one of the things that we really focus on. You got to have a solution that makes sense for the market you are in, whichever market it is that you are in. It's got to be scalable. If you cannot speak those two languages in this continent, you're going to lose. And I think you alluded to some of the challenges we have. Yes, it's been a debate in terms of, the kinds of companies that are being funded. And all these things actually have, it is a true point that is being raised. But to always come up, on top and to always keep winning, you've got to scale. And I think that would be what I would say about that challenge.
Yeah, no, I think you summarize it nicely, and I love it. I think scale is key, and some companies, the few companies that made it, like Jumia was able to basically, from founding date to IPO, it took them 7 years. And I think the key there is exactly what you said. It's the Rocket Internet playbook, is the ability to scale across multiple countries. Maybe one can argue even scale too fast, right? Because it's like the scale and the pace. The pacing is important. Like, you cannot scale at all costs, of course. As we all know, that there is the right sort of pace that one needs to follow when it comes to scaling. But of course, I think at the end of the day, it's executing on a playbook, whatever the reasonable pace is. And I think it's been demonstrated. I think there are statistically significant number of proof points. YC being one of the filters. Like, if you look at the 49 YC African startups over the past 5 years, there is a trend of I think it started in 2015 with only a couple of African companies that went through YC that were admitted. And today there is, I think in 2020, there is an all-time high of 15 African companies that went through YC. And out of those 49s, there has been only 4, I think, that basically folded, that went bankrupt. And on average, the YC portfolio has been doing great. Actually, it's above, it's top decile sort of performance when it comes to venture capital. So I think I agree with you that things may take a little bit more time. So the pacing may be, it may take 7 years to go to IPO, maybe not 3 or 4, like Google or in Silicon Valley. But yeah, we're getting there, and I think it's important to remain optimistic and be able to scale across multiple different countries. And I'm actually curious, because talking about Jumia versus Kobo versus Google, you worked in both social and business, social ventures and business ventures. And both in big tech like Uber, and then startups fast growing startups like Kobo 360, and social ventures like Edbridge and more business ventures like Uber. And I'm actually curious, what are some of the differences between social and business innovation you picked up on? Theoretically, social innovation, it may not be as scalable, or as it at least is perceived not as capital efficient as business innovations. But we have some counter argument, and I think M-Pesa actually is a case in point. It started as a public-private sector initiatives at Safaricom and Vodafone, and it was sponsored, I think, by the UK government, and to encourage private sectors engage in more innovative projects, and it turned out to be a vast success, and it's been generating financial returns. So that's maybe a fair counter argument. And I'm curious, so because today, most fintechs do run on M-Pesa, and I think it's probably half of the Kenyan GDP that is run on M-Pesa too. So I'm actually curious, having both worked in both, do you see an opportunity in one? What are some of the differences and commonalities, maybe between the similarities between the social ventures and business ventures?
Okay, so I would say this. So the similarities that I saw, were that in both cases, so Bridge is a social enterprise, but its model is based on scale. So we had about close to 400 schools in Kenya, as an example. So it's the largest network of schools, low-cost schools. So I think that while in for-profit companies, you want to maximize the ROI, you want to do this. In social impact or social enterprises, there's also the balance of the people you're trying to reach. And it's constantly at the forefront in every decision that you make. The second thing is in what I discussed in the communication. I think how you position your brand is extremely different when it's a social enterprise versus when it's a for-profit company. Whether it is the events you go to, how you discuss about the things you do. When it's a partnership that you do, the things that you value, you want to check certain boxes as compared to for-profit companies. I think that would be the general differences that I would say I've seen between social enterprises and in particular for-profit companies. But I think in terms of similarities is that scale is the first one. I think both of them had that in common. I think that in both of them, there was the need to localize the product. You have to sell a solution that is needed or wanted, or that you can convince people that they need it. And I think that's extremely important in terms of the element to localize. In every market you go to, you've got to localize whatever it is that you're looking at. But I think that while there is a difference on for-profit and social enterprise, one of the questions that one has to ask themselves is that what is their core mission? Now, a company may be for-profit, but if there wasn't that for-profit company, that element of what's the mission of the company becomes, to me, something that allows me to move from for-profit and social enterprise with no challenge at all, because I then think about what's the impact, what's happening, what is being improved, what are the efficiencies being created.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. And our partnership has experiences working in some of the social investment funds like the Omidyar networks and the Gate Foundations of the world backing social enterprise. And it's you're right, like you're essentially tracking at this point like a double if not triple bottom line, and with like a number of different metrics beyond just profitability. But and the communication you build around it is of course very different. And I think that's basically the main differences there for sure. And I think we truly need both. And it's interesting how you were able to navigate between one and the other. I think it's a rather unique sort of career trajectory, and that's something we feel very grateful for, again, for you sharing. I know we have we need to wrap it up in like a few minutes, and we have like a Q&A session following up. But maybe one last thing is so what one of my favorite GSB Stanford MBA lecturer and professors, Andy Ratcliffe, who's one of the founders of Benchmark Capital. He's been always advising students to start their career, specifically post MBA, to join a startup, a fast-growing startup that can help them rise to like leadership positions. And I think to that extent, you fit perfectly the mold, in that you joined Uber in 2015, and he was still like growing globally and scaling across Africa. A lot of the young like African graduates from Berkeley, Stanford, whether it's MCF scholars or others, tend to want to go back on the continent and sometimes want to strike on their own, start their own startups, and instead of like joining a fast-growing startup like Kobo 360. And I don't know if Kobo 360 is recruiting, and we can talk about like the sort of roles and profiles you're interested in. But I was curious, like how would you advise one starting your own thing versus like joining a fast-growing startups like Kobo 360? And maybe it isn't mutually exclusive. Maybe there are like opportunities like joining Kobo 360 and starting Lava Latte or like another similar businesses. But I was curious to open it up.
I think that it's not an either or. I think one has to also look at, where they are in terms of where they're looking to go. A reality that's never spoken about, you also have to look at yourself from a financial net. I chose the path of continuing to work and having side hustles. I always say that it's a combination of sometimes the reality of thinking about the safety nets. I'm a realist in the sense that you've got a gazillion people to support as an African child. You still have your Black debt. And so you need to have that, kids to educate, parents to support, siblings to support. And I found this whole balancing of working and also having side hustles or, participating in things I care about very enriching for me. I think it keeps me going. It allows me not to get bored. I think that juggling also puts you ahead if you're good at it. And I think that, for example, I knew I loved coffee shops. I like the idea of reading in a coffee shop. So it met a need that's very different from the world I live. The world I go to every day for work. It's not the tech, hardcore logistics kind of place. This was an artsy place. I'm not artistic, but now I'm learning the lingo that, when people are shooting a music video are talking about. So I say hi to artists, so it meets a need that otherwise my job wouldn't. So I would say that my thinking of the side hustle, and it's an opportunity that's quite unique in Africa. There's that, one, it's your home country, you don't have to worry about visas. But the second thing, there's all these networks of people you went to primary school with, all the people you went to high school with, and all this that is happening. So I think that that's an opportunity for somebody who has a passion. It allows you to build to what it is you're looking to have in the next 5 years. But at the same time, participate in startups, participate in companies. I'll say I learned a lot of skills in my journey. When you work at Uber, you learn how certain companies run. The same at Bridge and now at Kobo. Having to, when you're told, oh, hi, you're launching in Kenya. I hope you succeed. That's your measure. And you've got to think about, where's your office going to be at? Who am I going to hire? Who do I need as my first hire? How do I tell people who I am? Do people like Kobo? Does it even make sense? Do I need to localize? And so working gives you that, and it's quite important, and you can do that. And if you feel you have extra time, you can do something on the side. I think on the whole, one ends up learning and being more all round.
Thank you so much. Yeah, no, this definitely resonates, and it makes a ton of sense. And hopefully, we will have many other MasterCard Foundation scholars and Berkeley and Stanford alums that are going to be following your path, and hopefully have many successful side hustles. So yeah, just thank you so much. I just want to wrap it up. I know, we're a little bit out of time, and Marta, if you want to share with us some of the Q&A, we're happy to address it.
Yeah, I actually want to combine two of the questions here and basically frame the questions both in terms of bottlenecks and absolute requirements, and maybe they're both. And so one of the questions has to do with what could be a bottleneck is broadband infrastructure and connectivity. And we're dealing with this right now with COVID-19 and learning, and kids trying to get in school and e-learning, not having access to the internet. We had a lag in our connectivity here for a bit. So is that a bottleneck? How can tech in general deal with these bottlenecks, or is it a bottleneck? So that's one part of it. But maybe another bottleneck or requirement has to do with government. And do you have to have a connection in government to get forward, to move forward, or is government in fact a bottleneck? And so these are relating two different questions around bottlenecks and absolute requirements for success in startups and business now going forward.
Thank you for sharing. I can take a quick stab at it and then pass it on to our guest speaker Kagure here to address it with a different angle maybe. But I firmly agree. I think there are bottlenecks in Africa tech, just like everywhere. I think public infrastructure is one of them. And I think I would encourage, just like we discussed with Kagure, to be optimistic and to think about, again, if the bus is 3 minutes late, is this really a problem? Maybe we just start by we just start by building a bus or public transportation system back on the continent. And so, there are companies that are built on the backbone of bottlenecks. When you think about, a company like Andela, I mean, I've been told repeatedly since I was, a graduate engineer from Berkeley, that there aren't enough engineers, African engineers. And so, look at Andela. They have been training thousands of software engineers, African technical talent every year. And so I think, you need to look at bottlenecks as an opportunity. And I think whether it's, Uber, whether it's Kobo 360 taking a stab at the transportation infrastructure, whether it's Andela taking a stab at African technical talent, whether it's even Zipline. When you think about Zipline, that's another great success of a lot of people complain Africa roads are not safe and there are blocks everywhere. I mean, there's this company that started by dispatching in very remote rural areas, with a drone-enabled solution, healthcare products to communities that deeply needed it. And so they built a business on top of this, already a unicorn. And so a lot of those bottlenecks, I think, can be addressed in a meaningful way by building a venture. That's my own stab at it. But I mean, Kagure, I'm actually curious. You may have experienced many other bottlenecks or opportunities you may want to share.
I think too is broadband a challenge and infrastructure, etc. It sometimes is, and I think that you're right. I think it's the whole concept of remaining optimistic about it. Internet may not always be as perfect. Some areas it is. Other times it's slow. Sometimes it's down. And so what do? I just tether from my phone. You think about solutions that make your life more practical, because unless I'm interested in, thinking about the solution or having a solution now, I just have to do what it is in front of me. You take, for example, COVID-19, for a lot of countries, it was very easy to say, oh, let people work from home. I literally, for the West African countries, I had to worry about the fact that 90% of people don't have electricity during the day, because in West Africa, there's just no electricity during the day. The generator comes on at night. And so how do you expect people to work home when there's no electricity during the day? And I think that the challenges are there, and it would not be easy for us to say they aren't there. But the mindset that's very easy is that it is okay when sometimes things don't work. I always say it is okay when you turn on the tap and there's no water. It's okay. It is, after you stay in the US for quite a while, it feels very strange. Oh my God, there's no electricity. You kind of feel that, and then you're like, yeah, it's fine. I guess we can just doze off until they come back. You've got to have that attitude that I either have to have a solution that I can make work. It's a bit inconveniencing, slightly more expensive, but it's fine. So having that attitude actually does help a lot. It does help to overcome the things that people find quite challenging. I need my internet to work. So a lot of people will have, I remember when we first moved back, Uber worked in a co-working space. We shared desks with people, and we had 3 types of internets just to, different companies to subscribe to at the same time. My current company, I think we've subscribed to a gazillion. I even had to bring my modem from the house just to make it work. And it is the reality. Or you've got to run to a specific part of the building to have stronger internet. And it's hard, I must confess, but also it's not a reason to not try. We've grown. We are now the largest. We joined a market that already had other players, but we're now the largest, despite all these challenges that you'll face on the ground. So I think to it is optimism, but also the willingness to keep pushing. And to the question on government, you do not have to have that connection. I think you learn to create networks. There are those people who may be strong networkers. I'm not the strongest of networker. So you play with what is your strengths and what's your weakness. So because I knew I'm not the strongest, I'm quite weak when it comes, if you organize a cocktail and you make me go there, I just find one person and I stick to them and I'm like, okay, this was great. I'm not able to, build that kind of thing. But whatever I say is that if I work with you, you're going to remember me. I'm going to make sure I give my best. And basically, that's my form of getting to know people. As of, I think it was 2 weeks ago, I went for a meeting on my side hustle. And then I learned that this guy works a lot in government. So I took a deep breath and I was like, I feel like I do a lot for the private sector. I think there's something I can offer in public sector. I don't want it to be paid. I just want to have that opportunity. Are you able to introduce me based on the work we've done on this and that? So I think that's how I've had to build my connections with government and the people I know in government. So it hasn't been from historically who I've known. It's been in what I have done since I started college. Yeah. So to answer those two questions.
Thanks. And I would say that from to summarize, like the 3 key words out of this conversation today is scale, localize, and networks. I think those are the themes that have come across. And so there's one question here, and you somewhat addressed it earlier, but I think it goes back to the fear of going home once one has studied abroad. And this specific question is that the person's professional networks are stronger in the US than back home now. And so, how do you position yourself to launch that career back home? Maybe it's networks, localizing, and scale, but what specific things would you say to a person who has the strong networks abroad, but is afraid of what they're lacking back at home? How do you convince them to come back home and take a stab at it?
I think the first thing is to be willing to try to apply for jobs. I think that's the first barrier that exists. I always say, whether it's your LinkedIn, make sure it's up to date. Look for headhunters who focus on Africa. Reach out to them. If there are ever any opportunities, I'm graduating in 2021. Let me know. It could also be reaching out to people within your network you may have gone to high school with or primary school with, and that are doing something. And so they may be able to know who's hiring and who's looking for people. If you are in markets such as Kenya, Nigeria, etc., that have a tech ecosystem as an example, how do you join this ecosystem? And just, you don't have to be asking for anything. If you're home for the summer internship, just attend, make a few connections. So the fear is there. I think that it is harder to get a job generally back home than it is in the US. So do not start a month into graduation, 2 months into graduation. 2 months into graduation, you need to give yourself time. Give yourself 6 months, maybe start 8 months. And that will usually help. Yeah.
If I may just, I 100% second this, and I think it's important to give yourself time to plan and anticipate. Please talk to us. Please talk to P1 Ventures. Please talk to a number of other venture capitalists on the continent. I think we are at an exciting time where there is capital flowing and people are looking for smart individuals, graduates from some of the best universities, or just hustlers that are trying to build the next big thing. So we would gladly look at someone who's got a network in the US and who's got established credibility, professional experience in the US, and is from the region, who's curious interested to head back and take a chance on it. So yeah, please connect. I think the key word there is network, the last of the 3, and please network with us. We're more than happy to share our perspective and help out any way we can.
So what is the best way to connect? Through LinkedIn?
Sure. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. m@p1.ventures is my email address, and I'll let Kagure share whatever is best for herself and Kobo.
So mine would be email. I think email is best. And then from there, also WhatsApp. I'm quite responsive on WhatsApp.
Mm-hmm. All right. So I think we're nearly at the top of the hour right now. So I want to thank our guest, Kagure. Thank you so much for being willing to come. Thank you, Mikael, for helping to organize this and carrying on the conversation and offering your insights too. To Maren, who was handling things on the side here. Thank you also. Okay, and the last question is, where can we find your emails? Thank you so much for sharing. So I think let's see, if on the emails, I can try to send out them here. So Kagure, is it your Kobo 360 email?
No, I just, it's my personal email. I just shared it. Wamunyu E, my last name, E@gmail.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yes.
Okay. I think if anybody has a question about trying to connect with them, you can always contact the center, African Studies Center at Berkeley, which is asc@berkeley.edu, to network. And we hope to bring you the next one of these in the next couple of months. So stay tuned. And if anybody has a suggestion on who the next Berkeley Stanford alumni person, we will consider interviewing them in our next BeSt AI series. So thanks again, and everyone have a good day.
Have a good one. Thanks, you.
Okay, bye-bye.